Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. This is Johnny again with Johnny's Jabs. And on this clip, I am going to be responding to the debate that just occurred for October of 2019, the CNN New York Times Democratic candidates presidential debate. Before I start, I want to acknowledge my friend Oscar, who is a sound engineer in New York City. I was having some sound issues in the last clip and spoke with him a bit, and hopefully the issues are resolved to have a slightly different setup. Anyways, let's get right into it. There were 12 candidates on the stage today. They talked about a lot of issues. There were a lot of things they missed. And what I'm going to be going through is telling you who I thought the winners and losers were, what the biggest themes of the evening were, and then what I liked and didn't like about the debates this go around. So, winners and losers. I am going to say that the winners of tonight's debate were Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders. Hear me out on this. I actually think Biden was a winner. Andrew Yang was a definite winner. And it's tough to say with someone whose campaign is as big as the others, but Tulsi Gabbard was a winner in a kind of way. I just don't think she made as big a splash as the other candidates. And I think what this says is that it really is turning out to be a show for the ones at the very top of the race, meaning the front runners. Biden, Sanders, Warren, and I think that Andrew Yang is going to turn out to be a dark horse in this race. I don't think he will. I don't think he'll take the nomination. I think he's going to get a sizable following that's going to get him a good portion of votes when votes come into play. Biden, why do I think he was a winner? Just because I disagree with him on a lot of the issues that a lot of the positions that he has, but he was able to uh, defend himself well. There were some moments where he misspoke at places, but when we all misspeak, I misspeak a lot. I'm sure you could tell already. Uh, but I think that he did what he had to do to maintain that position as the centrist candidate who was running. The losers that I thought were in the debate, and I just don't like using that word because I don't like saying it about anyone, but I don't think that they were helped out at all by their performances. Senator Harris, Beto O'Rourke, and Cory Booker. I just don't feel like they made a big splash. Yeah, they had moments where they talked about good things here or there. They brought up good points. Maybe they challenged someone or defended themselves well, but they at this point, this is October. Votes start in January. I think Iowa's the first state. And if you're not really starting to make a splash and really starting to get people to see what your candidacy is actually about, it's not good enough at this point. Um, so, yeah, I think that those were the three losers. Now, Buttigieg is interesting. I couldn't put him in the category of either winner or loser, actually. And then there were a few others that I left out of that as well. But on one hand, I thought he was a winner because he really is propping himself up as the centrist candidate among the Democrats who is trying to position himself as someone that is going to quote unquote win over the heartland. And what they mean by that is the swing states in the middle of the country, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. Minnesota went Democratic last time, but it was very close. Pennsylvania as well. Put it in that category. So he's really trying to position himself as someone that's not very liberal, not progressive, and not conservative either. Um, so that's one reason that I think he is a winner because he is really solidifying that position among the candidates. On the other hand, I don't think he was a winner because he comes off as super, super phony. Now, I feel bad saying that because I don't know him personally. I'm sure if I met him personally, we'd get along very well. Um, you know, I could like someone who comes off as phony in public. What is it to me? It doesn't matter. But I feel like um, he avoided uh, talking about a lot of things. One in particular was impeachment. He avoided talking about actual impeachment of Donald Trump by talking about the polarization that's causing in the country. Um, the other thing was during the debate with regards to, or the discussion they were having with regards to Medicare for all, the way that he was positioning the choice of that Americans have with regards to private insurance plans is so phony and disingenuous. He keeps bringing up this point of, all right, if we have Medicare for all, Americans are not going to have choice in terms of the insurance that they want. Again, Americans are not searching for choice in terms of the insurance policy. Americans are looking for choice in terms of what they can get, which doctor they could go to, uh, and then I mean that's really it. They want they want freedom of going to whatever doctor they want, getting whatever procedure they want, um, being able to have full reproductive rights, um, other things. So it really has nothing to do with insurance. Insurance is just a mechanism by which we're paying for our health care. People want freedom for their health care, the freedom to see a doctor, the freedom to be able to be seen by a doctor. Not having insurance gets in the way of people uh, going to the doctor, making their appointments. So it's such a phony and disingenuous way to talk about the topic. And it really is just a way for him to position himself against the progressives, but also to position himself to get the donors from the healthcare and big pharma industry. He also was saying, I guess there was a big discussion with regards to the wealth tax, and he always wants to interject and have this holier than thou kind of personality. He's like, oh, well, this wealth tax looks bad. No, I don't know to whom the wealth tax looks bad. It was Senator Warren, her wealth tax plan. Uh, Taxes wealth above $50 million. I personally don't know anyone that is against that. Um, Even Republicans. And then Bernie Sanders, his wealth tax plan begins at 24 million. So it's just a very disingenuous way to talk about things. Um, Let me see. He also went after Beto O'Rourke on gun control. I guess Beto O'Rourke's buyback plan, and then enforcing the buyback plan is what he was going after, and saying that we don't need that kind of mechanism in order to work on gun control. But he was really going after him. And it's just such a, I don't want to say gun control is a non-issue, but that kind of bickering in terms of like how and what we're going to do, especially with an issue like gun control where we don't know exactly um, what will make the change in the country. It's a kind of issue, I see it as a public health issue where I think you have to take an all of the above approach in terms of what are all of the things that people are suggesting. They're suggesting whether it is limiting certain types of weapons, whether it is higher access to mental health care, you know, helping people out economically so they don't feel so desperate that they have to go commit these sorts of crimes. Um, it's an all of the above approach in my opinion, and I think a lot of people probably feel that way. So to go after Beto O'Rourke for this one proposition that he has, again, sounds so BS. And then there was one line that he said, I forget exactly um, to what Beto had said, and it was in regards to gun control. And he said something like, "I don't need lessons from you on courage." It just looked so condescending, and I don't like him for his policies. Um, but this goes back to what I said in the last video in terms of people voting or liking a candidate not based on policy but based on the kind of kinship they feel with a certain candidate. This turns me off completely. That kind of look, I love people who are educated. I love people who take pride in their education, but here he comes, like with his his Harvard degree, and bragging about the millions of languages that he speaks and that he learned Norwegian so he could read a Norwegian book, and then looks Beto O'Rourke right in the eye and says, "I don't need lessons from you on courage, politically or personally." I don't know. It looked shitty to me, and I mean that's just again that has nothing to do with the policy and what he really talked about substantively tonight. I have many issues with that, but I don't know. So I don't know whether to categorize him as a winner or a loser. The reason why I spoke so much about him right now is because I felt like this, in terms of my talking points, I felt like he really fit in this winner or loser debate. I don't know. What do you guys think? Amy Klobuchar looked like she was fighting, like her candidacy depended on it, and I think it kind of did. I think maybe in her mind tonight was a make or break night. I categorized her in the centrist faction or wing of the party, along with Joe Biden, and now I could confidently say Pete Buttigieg. They're definitely in this centrist wing of the party, trying to get big money donors, not really shake up the system too much. I think she was trying to see if she could gain any traction. I just don't know whom she would kind of usurp in order to, I don't know if I use that word correctly. I do that a lot, by the way. But I don't know who she was trying to get votes away from in order to maybe uh, boost herself up, or I don't know if that's what she was trying to do, but she was really fighting a lot of people. She was fighting the progressives, especially Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, um, to boost herself up. And then Julian Castro and Tom Steyer, I saw them as kind of coasting. Tom Steyer, I personally was introduced to him at this debate. I've seen the commercials, and I know that he was a billionaire, or I know that he is a billionaire. But I didn't know much else about him or he stood on the issues. I think it will give him a bigger profile. I actually liked where he stood on some of the issues. Um, it is a bit conflicting to say whether I really like him as a candidate or not, just because, you know, when they were talking about wealth inequality and they asked him specifically his reaction to Bernie Sanders, he was all for all the things that Bernie said. But then again, he is a billionaire. And do we need that kind of, do we need a billionaire in the White House again? Or I feel like to some degree the president should be a representative of the people, and uh, extreme wealth like that, it's not representative of the American people. Okay, so one of the first themes that I wrote down was again Warren and Sanders versus the world. Uh, Everyone's been kind of wondering like how long can Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders have this united front as the progressives in the debate and kind of fight against everyone else who's going after them, and they maintained that. And this was in light of, I think it was an ABC News interview that I didn't watch, but I saw a clip where someone had asked Bernie Sanders if there were differences between him and Elizabeth Warren, and he highlighted the fact that Elizabeth Warren had said that she is a capitalist through her bones, and that he doesn't feel that way. So, we expected maybe to see something going on between them, some disagreements, but no, I guess in this larger field of Democratic candidates, they seem to be holding off going against each other. So that was interesting. Let me see. You especially saw Warren and Sanders against the world when they were talking about Medicare for all. Mayor Pete, and I think it was Mayor Pete. I could be wrong, but he went after them, or Joe Biden, maybe both. But he went after them about the taxes. Uh, by the way that CNN framed the question immediately to, I think it was Senator Warren, about like, you know, uh, if you get a Medicare for all plan that Bernie Sanders introduced, if you pass that, is your plan going to increase taxes on the middle class Americans, on the middle class. And my whole issue is that every single time they talk about healthcare, they talk about taxes rather than costs. And every single time, here goes the corporate media talking about taxes again, uh, when in reality, the plan that Bernie Sanders is proposing is saying we're doing away with premiums, we're doing away with deductibles, we're doing away with co-payments. So your premiums are paid through your taxes. Yes, you might see an increase in the in the dollar amount of the taxes that you are paying, but you are going to be seeing a decrease in total medical costs. So it's a lot of bullshit that, like, we get so far as a country in this conversation about Medicare for all. Yet CNN keeps coming back with these talking points, Republican talking points, even though Amy Klobuchar wants to say that they're not Republican talking points. They absolutely are. That are saying that, oh, your taxes are going to be higher. Okay, well, say I'm paying $10,000 a year, um, for medical in my medical costs, and then say that goes away because of Medicare for all, but I'm paying $5,000 a year in my taxes. Well, I just saved $5,000. That's just an example. I don't know the actual numbers, but that's the idea that Sanders and Warren are proposing. And so they keep wanting to talk about costs, where the others want to keep talking about taxes. And I think this shows. I mean, I said that the losers of the debate were Harris, Beto O'Rourke, and Cory Booker, and I put all three of those in the camp of liberal establishment, in terms of they're trying to repeat the Obama model of winning an election, doing grassroots campaigning, but at the same time positioning themselves to cater to some corporate interests so that they can get big money donations for the general election. You're kind of seeing that disappear in this debate on Medicare for all, even to the point where you didn't see Beto O'Rourke, you didn't see Kamala Harris, uh, or Cory Booker really dive into this debate. You see in this Medicare for all debate, if you look closely, you see the real struggle that's going on in the Democratic Party. And that's why it's so interesting to watch these days. You're seeing the progressives, which is like the grassroots base of the Democrats, and the DNC. Now, me as someone who identifies as a progressive, I've felt, I guess, like I voted for Obama for both of his terms. But by 2016, I was very hesitant to vote for Hillary Clinton, uh, just because, one, I don't like her. I didn't like her foreign policy at all, and I thought a lot of the dealings going on between Hillary Clinton and the Democratic National Committee was very corrupt, unethical, maybe not illegal, but very unethical. I didn't like it, and so I was very hesitant to vote for her, but I did, just because I knew the dangers of what was going on with Trump. But just, this is anecdotal. It has, I mean, maybe there are other people that can relate, but I think overall, a lot of people who were hesitant about Hillary Clinton and the politics of yesteryear saw in Bernie Sanders that it is possible to move forward in the democratic process and within the Democratic Party, that there is an opening for us with real progressive values that don't want corporate money influencing our politics or our policies, and we're really trying to seize the moment. And that's kind of what's happening right now within the Democratic Party. Progressives against the Democratic National Committee establishment, the DNC establishment. Uh, so the second theme, I had Warren and Sanders versus the world. The second theme that I have was the attacks on Warren only strengthened her, except for two attacks. Now, here's the thing in general. what I'm seeing in these debates is the harder they go after Warren, the harder they go after Bernie Sanders, they are just giving them more of a position to state their platforms and make their case to the American people. And they look stronger. They look even better than they did before. Like when they were attacking Warren, and I'm going to go through who attacked her, but when they were attacking her, she just had all this free time to talk about her plans. Same thing with Sanders. Um, but let's see. So on Medicare for all, they did come after her, and she looked good, but she only endorsed Bernie's plan. So it's not like she was talking about her own plan, but still, nonetheless, like I like that about some of the candidates. If you can acknowledge that someone else has a good idea, I don't see anything wrong with that. Um, I think that the question of leadership uh, comes into account when you're talking about some new ideas. Like Bernie Sanders really is a leader on Medicare for all, but I don't think it's necessary to say that someone will be a good leader. They don't have to come up with all of the ideas. If someone else has a good idea, why not? Um, on the issue of the wealth tax, Elizabeth Warren wants to tax 2% of wealth above $50 million. So you earn $50 million. The next dollar that you earn, 2 cents has to go immediately to the federal government in taxes. Um, it was funny because people were taking her on this issue. And by people, I mean Buttigieg and Klobuchar, centrist candidates. But they did not disagree with her directly, which I thought was really interesting. And Beto O'Rourke, additionally, was someone that kind of uh, echoed that sentiment. They really were just saying that, oh, it just looks bad. Or Beto O'Rourke was saying he labeled her as punitive, and that it would, disaffect a portion of the American population. Well, which portion? Like people that like have over $50 million. So like they came after her, but they didn't disagree with her, and that can only make her look better. It gave Warren the opportunity to ask, like, I don't remember the exact quote, but something to the effect of, why does everyone think it's so important to protect billionaires? I thought that was fantastic. That was exactly what needed to be said in that moment. Senator Harris, Kamala Harris, tried to spar with Warren on tech, the issue of big tech companies. She came out with some weird shit. She was like, "Oh, are you against?" Let me rewind a bit. Senator Harris was talking about Twitter and how she was calling for uh, Twitter to delete Donald Trump's account. She said this months ago, and I guess Anderson Cooper or whoever was asking the questions asked her this question at the debate. And so she used that moment to pivot and be like, hey, well, I think that, we should call out Twitter and say that they should ban Donald Trump's account because it's hate filled and all this stuff. And then she's like, I call on Senator Warren to either agree with me or not. And why won't you agree with me on this? And like here, Harris is like talking about Trump's like stupid, idiotic Twitter, and all Americans are mature enough to know that he's idiotic. And then there's some hateful Americans out there too who are just like, yes, everything that Trump says on Twitter. If you vote for Trump, or doesn't mean that you're hateful. I'm not saying that, but there are people out there that actually agree with the bullshit that he says on Twitter. But anyways, Harris is challenging Warren on this, and then Warren did a fantastic thing. She was like, she realized what a non-issue Senator Harris was talking about, and she just kind of pivoted. She's like, whatever, I'm going to talk about antitrust laws that are affecting big tech. it was it was brilliant because it really got to the core of like how Warren operates as a candidate. She goes after big issues like corruption, and then Harris is just here talking about Donald Trump's Twitter. The other thing is it made Harris look like a loser because yeah, she's talking about Trump's petty Twitter, but and there's this is a theme, and I'll get to it later. But she kind of looked draconian out there, and that she looks like ready to. I don't know. I don't want to say authoritarian. I know she wouldn't be an authoritarian president if she were to win the election. I don't think she would be, but like a lot of the language that she's using and a lot of the issues that she's bringing up seem to have this kind of authoritarian, these authoritarian, I don't even know, like undertones to it. I'm still on the issue of the attacks on Warren strengthening her, except for two. I haven't gotten to the two yet. But one of the attacks on her that strengthened her, or I don't even know if it was an attack, but it was just Warren and Vice President Biden kind of sparring over the CFPB. I think that was the. I wrote down the acronym, but I did not write down the full thing. I think CFPB is I think Central Financial Protection Bureau. It's like it was an agency in 2011 um, that was established. I believe that's what Warren was talking about. That she brought to legislation and got it set up. And then she was talking about that, flexing on that, if you will. And Biden kind of turned her and was like, "I got the votes for you. You remember that? I got those votes for you." And Warren did something hilarious. Um, she kind of just turns, like, doesn't even like look at him, and she goes, "I am deeply grateful for President Obama." Like, basically telling Biden, like, "Yeah, you think you got me the votes? No, it was Obama and maybe some other people or whatever." But it was just a funny way for her to undermine his trying to set himself up as the leader on the stage. She kind of just was like, whatever. And Biden did this thing. I think he complimented her. Um, when you compliment someone, you're like, "Oh, good job." It's like a pat on the back or like, "Attaboy, attagirl." And it kind of looks a little bit condescending. I won't say full on condescending, but she just was like, "Thank you." It was really funny to me. I don't know if you thought it was funny, or I don't know if you think I'm a nerd, but I am. Uh, all right. Anyways, on to the two attacks on Warren that I think were actually kind of effective in favor for the other candidates. And the first one were the exchanges that went on between Andrew Yang and Elizabeth Warren. Andrew Yang did fantastic tonight. I think people are really going to start to like him over the next couple of months. I think he's going to get the libertarian voter in America on his team. But they seemed more like they didn't attack each other, but they seemed to have like more of a friendly exchange of ideas. And I like, why not? He brings great ideas to the table. Maybe not ideas that I would fully endorse, but like they're ideas. Like we should be talking about all solutions. There's so many problems going on, so why not? I they kind of went back and forth when it came to jobs. Elizabeth Warren was talking about the issue with jobs having to do with trade policies. We need to change our trade policies. She's talked about this before. Her trade policy talk has kind of stuck with me, so I think she does a great job on that. But Andrew Yang came back saying, well, the issue with jobs is not necessarily a rules problem. And then, I think it's nice when he's on stage and he talks about uh, human value not based on what kind of job you have. I think it's fantastic. I think it's a great message, and I think it uplifts the American people. And we need a president to be able to do that. But it was nice to kind of just acknowledge each other's points without having like a major disagreement. Even Elizabeth Warren was like, UBI is a good idea, and we've seen bits of it when we're talking about Social Security. Um, I don't know if that's necessarily the case. Social Security is something we pay into and then we're guaranteed later on. But I mean, then again, UBI we pay into it, we pay our taxes to the government, then we get back $1,000 a month as proposed by Andrew Yang. So I don't know. Then also they kind of went back and forth a little bit on the wealth tax, or at least Andrew Yang had criticized Warren's wealth tax plan, and he said that there are problems in other countries with the wealth tax, and that allowed him to then talk about value added tax, or VAT, and that's what he um, supports. VAT is a tax. Value added tax is a tax that is on your purchases rather than your income. And look, there are the criticism that I've seen him have over a wealth tax is that people who then make or have wealth in excess of $50 million end up taking their money to like foreign countries in order to avoid the taxation. So we don't get what we need out of it. But then there are criticisms of VAT, value added tax, which is that it disproportionately affects people of lower income because, you know, people of lower income, their expenses are a greater, their like monthly expenses are a greater proportion of their income than it is for the super wealthy. So, which is better? I mean, I'm more inclined with a wealth tax. I mean, who says we can't have both? But I mean, anyways, I don't want to get too much into detail. I just want to present the arguments for both sides to you. Uh, and then Andrew Yang also brought up disagreements with Elizabeth Warren on big tech. Elizabeth Warren has famously come out with her issues with Facebook and other large tech companies. She wants to break them up, essentially, not allow them to have as much power as they do. And he said that he's not necessarily for breaking up those tech companies, but he is for allowing Americans, all of us, to have ownership of our information that these tech companies are using for their monetization. It makes a lot of sense. I really love this idea that he has. Like, Facebook is using our information, our data for whatever it is that they do, Amazon as well, all these tech companies. Well, why can't we just have a de facto kind of stake in this? You're using my information. I have some right to that. That's of some value to you, obviously. So you should be paying me for it. That's Andrew Yang's plan. But the thing is, like, he always comes out like, oh, well, I'm against that because I'm for this. Well, you don't have to necessarily be against that to be for his plans. You know what I mean? Like, I kind of like both ideas. And then the second attack on Warren that I thought was kind of effective, it really wasn't that effective, but they were good points, was Tulsi Gabbard going after Warren. She merely asked Warren if she will end regime change wars. And Elizabeth Warren answered immediately, yes, we should get out of the Middle East. That wasn't the question, though, because regime change wars don't just, I mean, they have been occurring in the Middle East for the last 30 years, maybe longer. Or at least, CIA operations as well, longer. But there was a threat of going to war in Venezuela earlier this year too. So, you didn't answer the question. I would have loved to see that challenge happen, go for a little longer. I would have loved to see Tulsi Gabbard and Elizabeth Warren spar over that, because I think Tulsi Gabbard is making a great point. And it's not that I want to see Elizabeth Warren go down. I want to see these candidates do better. Um, Foreign policy, I think, is very important. It makes us safer. It makes the world safer. Um, so, anyways, let me continue. The next theme that I had, so I went through the two themes: Warren and Sanders against the world. The attacks on Warren strengthened her, except for two. The third theme that I have is that Bernie Sanders is back and even stronger. Now, we thought, or we didn't know what to think after his heart attack. Everyone had these questions about, like, where's his candidacy going to go? Like, is he going to be able to continue? And his campaign came out saying that they're going to change his schedule a bit. He's known famously for having historically a more active schedule than the rest of the candidates. So now his campaign came out and said we're going to maybe tone it down, maybe take on a schedule similar to that of the other candidates. And it was just funny. I think what were they talking? They were talking to him about his health, and he said, "I'm fine. I'm fine. I just want to talk about the opioid crisis," which I think was very charming. I forget if that got like a big applause or anything. Um, but even more important than that, he came out swinging on some of the major issues. He was really going after the DNC. He was really shilling for his own Medicare for All plan, really trying to sell it. One thing that he said during the Medicare for All discussion was, "I'm tired of people defending a dysfunctional and cruel system." And I think he directed that at Vice President Biden. He also went after Big Pharma there. And then in addition to that, he started going after the DNC, which was amazing. I fucking loved it. And then he went after the DNC for taking money from Big Pharma and from other big money industries. And he kept talking about the corruption of huge monopolies in all industries. I think that was during the discussion on big tech. And then he even went after Joe Biden on Iraq, like on Biden's vote for the Iraq War when Biden was a senator, and for supporting NAFTA. And then he kept on reiterating, his support for Medicare for all, his own support for Medicare for all, and criticizing others for not getting on board. Excuse me. Bernie Sanders was asked, why is your approach going to work in terms of, they posed the question to Biden, does Warren's, big systemic changes approach or Bernie's revolution approach, does that turn off the American people? And they asked Bernie Sanders directly about it with his revolution approach. And he just came right back at them. He's like, no, it's what the American people actually want. Fantastic. It looks like he's fighting more than ever before. Oh, here's the other thing. They didn't ask any questions on climate change. And this is in the wake of, since the last debate, there have been massive protests with regards to the climate. Greta Thunberg went to the UN General Assembly to talk about climate. And he's the only one talking about climate change and the fossil fuel industry in virtually all, not all, but in many of his answers. So he did a great job. Just, if you had any question in mind about, how he's going to come back, he's coming back swinging. Like, he's ready to fight. So maybe he had a personal moment of reflection. It was like, this is just, we all have one life, and this is what I got to do. I got to really, make this a strong fight. I wish I saw more going after the other candidates from him, being that I personally like him. And I just want full disclosure so that you don't think that I mean, I could be biased towards him, but at least where I stand on things. I wish I kind of saw him going after the other candidates a little more, but again, it's a huge field. I don't know. Who knows if it whittles down a bit, if that's when he'll get the opportunity to go after Elizabeth Warren a little more. I don't even think he would need to go after her. I don't think that they kind of share the same base. I think him going after Biden is way more effective. So the effective challenges against Bernie Sanders, though, came again from Andrew Yang. Andrew Yang did fantastic tonight. This thing is moving. So they asked Bernie Sanders about his federal jobs guarantee, and the federal jobs guarantee is a policy that says that if someone needs a job, they're going to get a job in the United States. The federal government will create jobs to employ people, and they will do it with, I guess, the ideals of the Green New Deal. And there's so much work that needs to be done with regards to the environment. And then he was also talking about child care, healthcare jobs, uh, elderly care, so many different things that the federal government can employ people for. But Andrew Yang, here comes Andrew Yang, and he challenges him and says, I'm for UBI. I'm not for a federal jobs guarantee. Let's just give people money up front. That people deserve it anyways. Andrew Yang keeps talking about his wife, who is a caregiver to their autistic son, and that she doesn't get paid. And he says that UBI would effectively treat that problem. Personally, I think a mother taking care of an autistic son deserves not deserve is earning should be earning more than $1,000 a month. So I'm not sure I agree that a UBI compensates her for her work. Uh, but nonetheless, it's a good principle that he's bringing about. But what Andrew Yang was saying was that most Americans don't want to work for the federal government. He's got to get away from that argument. I don't know if that's true. I could be wrong, but the things that I hear when I have friends that tell me that they work for the federal government, I assume right away, well, you must have like the best benefits in the world. You get every federal holiday off and such. So, and especially if we elect someone like Bernie Sanders, I think people will be so inspired to work for the federal government. They'll take pride in it. All right, if the country like rallies behind him, that means the country is rallying behind Medicare for all, rallying behind the Green New Deal. That means they're ready to do the work along with Bernie Sanders. Like that's the whole message of his campaign. So I don't think that he's right in saying that most Americans don't want to work for the federal government in a Sanders administration. So yeah, but anyways, I think that Andrew Yang is going to grab that libertarian vote. The only thing that is going to come into question is, all right, when it's clear who the nominee is, like if it is Bernie Sanders, how does Andrew Yang tell his constituents, all right, look, we did our thing. I'm now endorsing Bernie Sanders, because all the candidates are saying they're going to endorse whoever the Democratic nominee is. I think there is overlap between the Sanders Yang supporters, just because, again, anecdotally, I like Andrew Yang, but I'm a Bernie supporter. Uh, my sister, I don't, she might be mad at me for this, but she said during the debate she was watching with me that she likes Andrew Yang, and I know she likes Bernie Sanders. I don't know who she necessarily supports exactly if she's following that closely, but again, anecdotal. It seems that there is some overlap. It might be more difficult to get Andrew Yang supporters to support someone like Joe Biden. Say Joe Biden wins the nomination, or maybe Elizabeth Warren. I don't know. We'll see about that. What I didn't like about the debate, first thing was that they talked about impeachment. Great. Everyone's kind of on the same page. They barely talked about Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, Burisma, and Ukraine. And look, I'm not, I am for Bernie Sanders, but I'm not like, it's not that I want any harm done to anyone in particular, but I just feel like this is such a huge issue. The Republicans are going to make a huge issue out of this. We might as well hash it out now. And Joe Biden, if you're going to take the nomination, let's get your talking points right about it now before you start getting challenged from the right. It's going to be a huge issue for Republicans if he wins the nomination. And then the other thing is, I like that this particular issue highlights the difference between laws and ethics. All right. He might not have broken the law. Hunter Biden didn't break the law by doing this, but does it necessarily mean that it was ethical? That's a great discussion to be had by the Democrats. Um, and let me see what else I wrote. Yeah, it's an opportunity to shed more light on the Trump family and their corruption. Like, all right, we could talk about Hunter Biden and Burisma and family being on the board of foreign energy companies and how that might have an impact on policymaking. But all right, we're having that discussion. Now let's shift to what's actually happening with the Trumps in Washington, D.C. and around the world. Uh, the Trump sons have dealings with Moscow. Uh, his son-in-law has dealings with Saudi Arabia. Uh, his daughter has dealings going on with licensing. I think she's got, I don't know what she's selling in China, but she got licenses approved. So it's crazy that all of these kinds of foreign business transactions are occurring with the Trump family right now, and we're not taking the opportunity to talk about it. Uh, I, people on TV are always asking, what is Trump's, what is his way of making decisions? Like, what is his philosophy? Excuse me, his guiding philosophy. My personal opinion, his guiding philosophy is what's going to make him money. He's making his decisions based on personal business, and I think it's important that we talk about, any kind of morality, ethics, corruption, uh, in politics. One, so that Democrats can be a stronger party, but then two, we need to highlight what's actually going on with the Trumps. Um, and this also kind of represents the old way of doing politics. Like I said, it wasn't illegal for Hunter Biden to work on the board or be a member of the board, but was it ethical? No. Uh, but this is probably how they've been doing politics for the last God knows how long, and we really want to change. And it would be great if Sanders or Warren actually talked about it, because they're both in a position to do so, unless we don't know something about them, something hiding in their past. I think that's highly, highly unlikely. Um, I don't know if any other candidate is in the position to really talk about it. Even if, like, Senator Harris, for example, has a clean record, she obviously doesn't want to, because she seems to be wanting to be a vice president pick for Joe Biden. So look, we need to talk about that. Another thing I didn't like was that they had one question on foreign policy as it relates to Turkey, Syria, and the Kurds. Um, and it was just kind of like a layup, like, for all the candidates. There was some interaction between them, but it just seems, look, it's very easy in this global political environment to defend the Kurds, as we should, and to go after Erdogan because of what just happened with Trump immediately withdrawing without any kind of warning, without any kind of setup or protection for the Kurds. But it's not so. This is what I wrote. I'm just reading. It's not so easy to do that when you're unveiling your record, the record of your ties to supporting Saudi Arabia, to supporting Turkey, Israel, United States, that whole alliance that has emboldened and armed extreme Islam, including Al Qaeda. So, we're all here saying, like, anti-Turkey or whatever, but we've been in alliance with them, and we've been in alliance with Saudi Arabia, and Turkey's been in alliance with Saudi Arabia and Israel as well. And all of this has kind of emboldened Al Qaeda for sure. We've definitely armed Bin Laden in the past. Don't let anyone think that we haven't done that before. And then, the invasion of Iraq then creates this vacuum, and ISIS is created. And so, like, it's just like, it's so hypocritical. And then the other thing with this whole thing, you make it so easy to demonize Russia with just this one question. Yeah, it's not so easy to do so when you finally acknowledge the history of the United States meddling in foreign elections. And Andrew Yang was the only one that brought this up on the stage. And Amy Klobuchar, obviously the centrist that she is, uh, came back and saying, oh, let's not make any false equivalence between what Russia did and what the United States has ever done. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? With the United States having CIA operations in Central South America, in the Middle East, all over in Africa, all over the world. So she has no point on this, but we're not even able to go past it because we've demonized Russia. Look, Russia is not a is not a benevolent actor. They have imperial ambitions. Putin at least does just as much as Donald Trump and the last however many United States presidents have. So they're acting very much in the same way that the United States has acted on the world stage. Um, at the same time, Russia has also been helping Syria in the fight against ISIS. Now, the way that they talk about it, they make everyone think that Bashar al Assad in Syria is somehow for emboldening ISIS or supporting them. That's not the case at all. He wants something to do with ISIS. If you knew anything about Syria, Bashar al Assad, he's an Alawi Muslim. I don't know too much about Islam, but I think that it is a sect of Islam. I think, but they're a minority, and so in Syria, the way that the president is an Alawi is part of this minority is because the minorities in Syria have created this kind of majority coalition. So they definitely are against ISIS. Don't let anyone make you think otherwise. They are for sure against ISIS. Um, Anyways, in regards to foreign policy, they missed out on talking about China. I thought they were going to talk about the NBA. They didn't. And they didn't talk about any global uprisings against corruption that have been occurring in Ecuador, in Haiti, in Iraq, or in Egypt. And this has all been recent. Another thing I don't like in these debates is the co opting of discussions to talk about peripheral issues. What do I mean by that? So, candidates, someone will ask a question about, let's say, or let me just use this example. During the discussion for Medicare for All, we're having a very spirited debate, Sanders and Warren against the center establishment, corporate Democrats, and then here comes in Senator Harris, and she's like, "Oh, we have to talk about women's reproductive health," and then she makes this huge point about it. It's a cheap applause line. Now, look, it is important that we talk about women's reproductive health, but that's not the question that we asked. And I hate seeing that on the stage. It's like it's so cheap. It takes away from the focus of the conversation. And like I hate to say it, but like don't all the Democrats like aren't they supportive of that? Like who on that stage disagrees with you? Like I don't like seeing a debate about something that everyone kind of agrees upon. It, ain't nobody got time for that. Like come on. And then the same thing. Cory Booker did the same thing. He's like during the discussion on income inequality, he's like, "Oh, but no one's talking about childhood poverty and the child poverty rates in this country."